the interesting thing about charts like this is you really get to see how every population just sort of blends into its neighbors, and how all of the world's population is sort of the spectrum. Kind of when you look at one of those like 1024 color like rainbow charts. Like when you're like selecting colors on a computer, and it'll have this huge spectrum with like over 1,000 colors, and you know how every color just feeds into each other perfectly. Like,
yeah.
It's almost similar to that, where everybody just a little bit feeds, mixes with the people that next to it, while the other one mixes with that one, and then the one on the other side of them, and everyone just kind of blends into each other.
Yeah.
And it says a lot about migrations and how people migrate, but then there's also a whole lot of people that just stay for generations. And there's something to be said about certain key ancestry groups, right? That you can see hotspots from where they're the strongest, and then they sort of fade out, and then you go somewhere else, and then a different sort of group is stronger. And there's definitely certain ancestry groups that you can divide world populations into, whether you do it into 8 groups or you do it into 14 groups. But as you do it, you still see some of these same patterns of how people just blend into each other.
And we can see that we're more similar than we are different.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like the blue one is all over the place. The pink one's all over the place. Like there's only a few that are kind of loosely scattered, but there's like a thread that connects almost everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, and when some of them, there's just no way to like on a one horizontal plane divide these up where they're all going to feed into each other. Like if you see Middle East, it's kind of out there when it could be put right next to Caucasus and like Balkan. But anyway, like if you were to follow which countries are next to which, you still would see like a continuity between their mixes. With Armenians, you see some of the green. Right?
It's like Indian,
but my guess is we get it from Iranians mostly, who have a higher segment of it.
Oh.
So us mixing with Iranians is where we would get that from, not necessarily directly from India.
And it just blends that way throughout all the countries until you get over there.
Yeah, that's kind of my point with what I was trying to say.
They're like puzzle pieces. You can almost put them together, and if we have more data, we will be able to create that like color gradation system.
Absolutely.
And the colors will be more dense in certain areas, but at the end, it's all just blending together.
Yeah. And you can still kind of follow it. Like when you go to Turks, who are past Armenians, they still have some of the green and they have some of the yellow, which is Asian.
From the Mongolian migrations that happened previous.
Yeah, exactly. And then you move on to Syrians and what is that? Palestinians.
Right there, you can see the blend happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Then that's when it starts increasing into that orange one, which is Arab, probably, right? Like, and it kind of peaks in Saudis, as you can see. So that's kind of more of like a pure sort of like Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Arab, right? And then populations like Syrians are a bit more mixed. They're going to have some of that. They also have some of the Caucasus element. They're a little bit more light skinned, Lebanese people as well. And anyway, yeah, just as you follow the map, it all just sort of blends and feeds into each other.
It's awesome. I've been showing this to a lot of different people. Everyone kind of, I've been getting mixed feedback. Just because I think it's hard to read at first if you're not used to looking at graphs. So I feel like some people just literally didn't understand what it meant, but only because of it's just it might be complicated to look at and not know what you're looking at. But a few people had those aha moments where they were just like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, in like that case, it's probably better to show the other graphic, which has the colors identified in the legend.
That's right,
by name, and then it's just kind of like, okay, like so if you were told that what you're looking at is various population
exactly, you can break it down.
Subpopulations. Then you can like see, okay, so I know the names of these groups, and it just shows me the mixes here.
Yeah, but this one you have to deduce.
It's a bit more implied.
For sure. French is interesting. Where's Spain?
Right there, just under it.
Spaniards. So Spaniards got I want to compare Spaniards to Armenians. So, they got more of that blue. They got more of the
light blue, which is like Mediterranean.
Oh, it's Mediterranean.
Because see, it peaks in Sardinians, which are on an island, and again, they're isolated, so they're a great sample population to kind of get the maximum of it, right? And the blue is more of the northern, because you see it peak in Russians and North Russians,
right?
Ukrainians.
Northern European Russian, yeah.
But again, little by little, it kind of feeds out and mixes into the white one as you go south.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Spaniards are sort of a mix of both, and then a bit of the Caucasus one.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yes, like the Spanish culture has always been really interesting to me because it's hard for me to really pinpoint it. It's like a mixture of a lot of different things out there, and that's basically what it looks like. It's like the Caucasian mixed with the Northern Russian mixed with the Southern European, and then there's a little bit of the like Indus Valley.
That one, no, the orange one is Arab.
Oh,
actually.
That's right. It is Arabic.
And what's interesting is you see it in Sicilians and Cypriots. Mm-hmm. So Southern Italians do have some Middle Eastern mixed in with them.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount, but just like, what would you say that is, like 10%, 15%?
Yeah, by proximity, and probably like on boat maybe over the years, the boats, because it's closer to the Northern Africa.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Exactly, yeah. And a little bit even on Greeks. That's just, I think, mixed over time. I mean, if you go back up a little bit, if you see some of the other populations, okay, so like Egyptians have like a third of theirs in that orange. Palestinians have a good amount. Syrians. So you have migrations of groups like these.
Yeah.
Up north into Italy, and Sicily was sort of a battleground between Muslim empires and Italian empires for centuries, because North Africa was Muslim, and then Sicily is just sort of like almost in between North Africa and Italy, even though it's certainly closer to Italy. But the certain things you see that in maps like these that are very kind of make it clear, that sort of simplify these mixes. And it could be more complicated, if we were to sort of break them down into a larger group, like instead of 10 groups, break it into 24 groups. Say, like, imagine that. The map would start to look more complicated. There'd be a whole lot more colors and kind of hard to make it out. So that's why when you keep it to like 7 to 10 colors, it's easier.
You can really see the blending of everything. Yeah, because if there's more shit, it's gonna be, the colors are gonna get crazy.
And of course, there's always, just looking at it, there's, bless you, there's more stories, to this, and people are more different than just how the colors seem to indicate, right? And that's because in between the lines, there's other stories and other mixes.
Yeah.
But just as a whole, kind of looking from a bird's eye view, this is, just a great way to sort of to look at that. You mentioned Spaniards. Close to them, you'd see, what is that? Northern Italians, not that different from Spaniards. You see that?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. And I think, you know what? I think somewhere in here, there is DNA from the Americas that within the Spaniard population that they're not accounting for, because they went to South America and people probably came back with them,
Oh, I go.
When they conquered, not just South America. Yeah, South America. England got North America. Spain got South America. Yeah, so
Latin America. Yeah. I don't know how much of a huge component, because
you don't think so?
Yeah, because a lot of people stayed. Like a lot of the Spaniards that moved stayed.
Oh, a lot of people didn't come back.
And then, in order for them to be mixing, it would have had to have been like purebred Indians going back. And they were only going back as slaves.
Oh, that's right. So there wasn't much of a genetic mixture there.
Yeah, there's probably, probably happened in some cases, but
very few, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many people in the world. And when you look at like certain population centers that people have just been reproducing for a long time, these things are blips, right? Like they don't even
And it's very
register.
recent too.
Yeah.
Most of this shit is like thousands of year old shit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. That it has to be a huge migration for there to be an impact, like for it to have just been in the last 1,000 years, like the Turks. That was kind of fairly recent compared to some of the other mixtures.
Yeah,
Armenians was like 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, weren't we under Mongolian rule for like 100 years or something, like from 1200 to 1300 or something like that?
Armenia?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were.
We were allied with them, I guess.
Well, and the whole Middle East was under their rule.
Yeah.
The Mongols conquered all of Asia, and most of Asia, and they, when Genghis Khan died, they split up into several, like 5 empires, and one was the Middle East, and one was like what's basically Russia now, and Central Asia, and then there was another one that was China. So these huge empires. But anyway, yeah, the Middle Eastern one, Armenia, was in that. And
they conquered most of the Indus Valley too, right?
They not the Mongols themselves, but there were Mongol descendants, the Mughals or the Moguls, who ended up later on, a couple centuries later, this guy named Babur, who claimed descent from Mongols. They came and conquered them, but there's like a long tradition of Central Asians or north invaders from the north coming in and conquering India. It goes back to the Indo-Europeans when they conquered the Indus Valley civilization, and then after that, there's multiple cases of like these migrations that are coming out of Central Asia that push people down into India. And every 500 years or 1,000 years, there's a migration and they like conquer northern India. So Indian peoples on the whole are pretty mixed too, at least the northern Indian ones.
But from the west, not from the east because of the Himalayas, right? On the northeastern side is the mountains, so they don't really get a lot of the Chinese.
Yeah, but from the north end, that's when it kind of clears up. And so then they're just basically coming down around the Himalayas.
Oh, on the right side.
Central Asia's on the other right. So it's more Mongol. It's not Chinese people because that's where the Himalayas are blocking.
Right.
But it's more like Mongol, Turk people that came down.
Got it.
Because they've been conquering India for a long time. They brought Islam. Turks brought Islam to India. Mm-hmm. And that there's a long history there. But sorry, what were we saying with before that? Oh yeah, with the Mongols. He brought the Mughal Empire, and that ended up, being an Indian dynasty in itself. Mm-hmm. But with other groups that you look on here, like the Central Asians, like Uzbeks and stuff like that, they'll be some of the most mixed groups in the world because they have like even blends between like several different populations because they have like Iranian roots and they have Mongol, Turkic roots.
And those countries really aren't in the media or on TV. So as for me, living in America most of my life, I've had almost no exposure to those cultures ever. So now that I'm doing my own research and reading about it, I'm just like, holy shit. I'm seeing genetically mixes that I've never seen before. It's nuts.
Yeah. They are, they're Turkic peoples, and then, sorry, I just remembered what I was going to say. The part of the impact of the Mongols conquering the Middle East was they pretty much chased Turks out of the Central Asia and they pushed them further into the Middle East. So a lot of the Turks that settled Anatolia, Turkey, they were pushed further out west by Mongol invasions. And so these are like their warring tribes that are looking for new land because they're constantly getting pushed back by Mongols. And they are making alliances with local landholder, local empires, and being put on the front lines. And so that's that. Like the first Turks that settled Turkey, basically they were given land there by the Turkic Empire that was operating out of Iran at the time. It was the first Turkic Empire called the Seljuks. And they were pushed out further east, and these Turks that were already living on the frontiers, like on the war lines, right? They were granted sort of land to be there, and that land, of course, happened to be in Turkey because that's where they were battling with the Byzantine Greeks. And so
it was from the south. I always thought it was from the north, but it was from the south. It was through Iran. It was from that direction that they came through.
They came through Iran.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, I always thought it was from the north. They were already pretty much admixed with Iranians by the time they got to Turkey, and that's why you see that in their DNA.
very little Mongol DNA, right?
Right.
And that's because there was already a large population in Turkey that they mixed with, which is predominantly Caucasus-like,
Mm-hmm.
Then there's people on the coast that have sort of Greek-like DNA. And other than that, it was just these like Mongol/Iranian people that were coming in and speaking Turkic. And so the language comes, and so they share a sort of language tradition that's not Indo-European, it's Turkic, right? It's its own family. It's more similar to Mongol, and it's the Central Asian languages like Kazakh and Tatar and Uzbek and stuff like that. But the people are predominantly a Middle Eastern people, right? They just share a sort of distant state heritage, that because of these tribes that moved over. So they kept the language, but essentially they're a Middle Eastern culture, right?
Yeah, it's like genetically they are of the people who were there, but the culture is different. The language is different.